Hey everyone, welcome to Ex-Fundie Diaries. My name is Elly, my pronouns are she, her, and in this video I'm going to share with you my experiences with Halloween and demons. So light a candle and let's get creepy. Like many fundies, I was not allowed to celebrate Halloween growing up. Instead of trick-or-treating, we often went to alternatives together as a family at churches. I was never a huge fan of them, so I don't remember much, but I think it was mostly games set up either in parking lots or multi-purpose rooms with candy as prizes. I think one of them was a fishing game. Kids would hold pretend fishing poles over the side of a partition, and a grown-up would be behind putting candy on the clothespin at the end of the fishing pole. And I think it was supposed to be like fishing at the Sea of Galilee with Jesus. We were allowed to dress up when attending these church alternatives, as long as our costumes were modest and wholesome. Definitely no ghosts, witches, or wizards allowed. The Anglican school that I attended in kindergarten, 1st, 2nd, and 6th grade celebrated All Saints' Day, the day after Halloween. The big event was the All Saints' Day parade, where the principal and his wife would lead us around the parking lot and parents and caregivers would take pictures. This All Saints' Day parade was biblically themed, and if I remember correctly, the principal and his wife always dressed as Abraham and Sarah from the Bible. Each of the teachers would dress as a different day from the creation story in Genesis. Since the school was so small and there was only one teacher for each grade, this worked out perfectly. I believe we, the students, had 3 options to choose from for costumes: Bible characters, angels, or parts of nature, which of course were created by God. In 6th grade, I dressed as a fall tree, and I was the only tree in the whole parade, so I felt very special. I loved this costume so much, in fact, that I have brought it back in adulthood. Wearing this leaf crown on my head is usually my go-to easy costume. Some may call it lazy, I call it tradition. The one time I was ever able to go trick-or-treating was when I was 17. This was the year that my parents became consumed by an abusive cycle, so they were pretty lax in enforcing some of their strictest rules. So when a small group of homeschool friends went trick-or-treating, I actually got to go with them that year. My costume of choice gets more and more profound to me with every passing year. I dressed as a runaway bride. I wore a veil, a white prom dress of sorts, and Converse sneakers. At the time, there was no deeper metaphorical meaning for me. I just thought the idea of a runaway bride was hilarious and kind of edgy, at least according to the standards of my homeschool community. Now, as you can imagine, this costume is brimming with meaning to me. Just layers and layers of symbolic significance. This runaway bride persona is like a visual representation of my 17-year-old subconscious just yearning to run away. From patriarchy, from purity culture, from homophobia, from all of it. And to be punny, if I was the bride of Christ, I have long left him at the altar. Sorry, Jesus, we can totally still be friends though. That one trick-or-treating experience was definitely the exception to the rule. Halloween was viewed as evil, satanic, and anti-everything we believed in as Christians. But on the years that we didn't go to the church alternatives, we would do our own alternatives at home. We put a bag of candy on the front doorknob with a sign that said, "Please take one." We turned off all the lights in the front of the house, and then at the kitchen table, we would play board games using candy as prizes. To be fair, as long as our parents were in a good mood, this was pretty fun. At the same time though, our kind of fun reinforced to us the us versus them mentality that was always being drilled into us. I remember feeling disdain for trick-or-treaters as a young child and peeking out the front curtains to see if I could catch a glimpse of the worldly, sinful heathens walking by. Of course, there was also a part of me that really wanted to join them, but I had to deny my flesh and push that desire down. From a very young age, my mom would always say, We do not celebrate Halloween. Halloween is too scary. But what was evidently not too scary for a young child to interact with was demons. As early as age 6, I was terrified of demons, and I believed in them just as faithfully as I believed in Jesus Christ. I remember hearing stories in church and Sunday school and on the Christian radio stations that my parents would listen to about people in the Bible being possessed. I worried often that this could happen to me, and I went to my dad on many occasions to ask him about it. It became a frequent topic of conversation between us. The details of what he taught me are a bit fuzzy now, but to the best of my ability, this is what I remember him teaching me. Christians cannot be possessed, meaning that demons can't get physically inside of their body or their soul because Christians belong to Jesus. However, demons can harass Christians from the outside and somehow also put thoughts into their brain. This is obviously confusing and contradictory, but like pretty much everything else I was taught, I accepted it as truth. My dad told me that demons were all around us and that they were always trying to hurt and attack Christians and to entice them over to the devil's side. He said that since they were invisible beings, they could go through walls, and there was no way for you to keep them from sneaking into your house. This was not the comforting response I was hoping for, and it made me even more afraid than before. But he reassured me that because I was a Christ follower, I could take authority over demons in the name of Jesus. Anytime I could sense the presence of a demon nearby, I should say, "Get behind me, Satan. You can't hurt me because I belong to Jesus." And they would instantly vanish as if being expelled by a mighty force. Essentially, it was the evangelical version of the disarming charm Expelliarmus, which, of course, I wouldn't have known until I was 18 because Harry Potter was seen as satanic and I wasn't allowed to watch it. And in the present, I of course don't support J.K. Rowling because of her transphobia, and also there are some seriously problematic parts of the Harry Potter movies, but also magical and wonderful parts that I still appreciate, and also Hufflepuff pride. So basically it's complicated. But back to the demons. From age 6 onward, I often felt an evil, chilling presence next to me when I was alone, especially when the lights were off. Trips to the bathroom at night were especially fear-inducing. Even though the bathroom was only one door away from my room, it felt like a long, dangerous journey. The worst part was the climb down and then back up the bunk beds that I shared with my younger sibling because my back was exposed for a few seconds. Sometimes I would rush, which would cause my foot to slip and my shins to hit the wood. That definitely hurt, but it was nothing compared to the terror I felt inside. I'd whisper, "Get behind me, Satan! You can't hurt me because I belong to Jesus!" And then I would run to the bathroom as fast as I could and run back to my bed. When I was finally under my covers, I would push my back against the wall and wait for my heart to stop pounding. Fear of demons and trying to banish them was a huge part of my spiritual inner life as a kid. I also prayed constantly for protection just in case my banishing didn't work, and sometimes I would get stuck in compulsions and loops of praying the sinner's prayer. I hoped that if God did have to send an angel to protect me, that I wouldn't have to see it, because I was almost as afraid of angels as I was of demons. My dad told me once that he woke up in the middle of the night and there was an angel at the end of his bed, and he said it made him feel safe and comforted, but it scared the shit out of me, and I always hoped I would never have to see an angel in my room. They kind of seemed like the same as demons, only they worked for the good side. As a teenager, many of the books that I read discussed demons, angels, the devil, and spiritual warfare in various capacities. Some had occasional spiritual warfare themes, like Francine Rivers' books, and others were completely focused on spiritual warfare, like the Left Behind the Kids series by Jerry B. Jenkins and Tim LaHaye, or the Circle trilogy by Ted Dekker. I began to emulate the characters in these books and copy the way that they would fight against the devil and demons and evil spirits. My favorite of all was a Christian fantasy series by Donita K. Paul called The Dragon Keeper Chronicles. I can't remember many details from these books now, but one phrase stands out very clearly to me even now. My thoughts belong to me and Wolder. The story was very allegorical, and Wolder represented God. So whenever the main character could tell that the demon-like characters were trying to enter her mind, she would think to herself, my thoughts belong to me and Wolder, and that would make them go away. Despite this being a fictional series, reading this as a teen felt like confirmation to me that what I had been doing all along was the right way to try to banish demons. At age 17, when all hell broke loose in my family, pun intended, my parents got really into a very charismatic type of spiritual warfare. They framed their marriage and our family problems this way, spending hours waging war on demons and principalities, binding and loosing in the spiritual realm, taking authority and naming specific demons in order to cast them out. Not giving these spirits names like Billy or George, but the spirit of unforgiveness or the spirit of bitterness. Or, as I mentioned in my masturbation and porn video, the spirit of sexual addiction. Based on some scriptures that I can't remember now, they believed that we needed to know exactly which spirits we were dealing with in order to effectively cast them out. So they would spend hours in fervent prayer, petitioning the Holy Spirit to show them what to call specific demons. I now see this as an extremely traumatizing waste of time. It not only wreaked havoc on our physical and mental health, but it was also a convenient distraction from the abuse that was happening in our home. Desperate to help my family get out of our never-ending hell, I also got swept up into this binding, loosing, demon-naming frenzy. My parents had a growing collection of spiritual warfare books that they were immersing themselves in. The year I attended a Christian university, I was reading one of these books myself. Traveling back to school after coming home on a break, I brought this book with me on the plane for, just some light in-flight reading. The guy who sat next to me was very interested in the title of my book, and we ended up having a pretty in-depth conversation about Christianity and spiritual warfare. Here is me reflecting on it a few days later. January 8th, 2012. Rob is a guy that sat next to me on the plane to school last Sunday. He is part of a cult. He used to be a drug user. The way he was describing the church services, I believe he is now getting his high from the church. He described the holy water, the blessings, and the miracles as a high, and compared the feelings to a very dangerous drug he used to take. I'm afraid he has replaced one addiction with another. I asked Jesus what spirit was ruling him, and he said the spirit of denial. Something was very wrong in Rob, and he got very defensive when I would ask him pointed questions about the requirements of his church's attendance. I feel so sad for him. I am praying that Christ's power will break through the darkness for him to set him free from the spirit of denial and from the need to get a physical rush. I love how I had the nerve to say that someone I had just met was in a cult, while at the same time holding a book called The Art of War for Spiritual Battle. I mean, what an impressive display of confidence. That's something I love about fundies. How quick they are to point at each other and say, "You're in a cult." It's like, my friend, to quote Jesus, you may want to take the log out of your own eye first. And of course, I am saying this first and foremost to my own past fundie self, with love and the understanding that she was brainwashed. About a month later, my boyfriend, now husband, came to visit me for a few days. We went to a restaurant together one night, and on the way back to drop him off at his hotel, we had to drive through some mountains in the dark. We were just chatting and listening to music when all of a sudden, the overhead lights in my car started flashing on and off on their own without warning. It only lasted for a few seconds, but as you can imagine, I freaked the fuck out. I was certain it was demons, so I jumped right into banishing them out loud and asking God to send angels to protect us. Once the flashing stopped, I figured that my spiritual warfare prayers must have worked. But it still left me terrified that demons were following us and actively trying to attack us. Although, looking back on it now, how are flashing lights dangerous? Like, if demons were trying to attack us, why would they choose that? Nearly a decade later, I have no idea what caused the lights in my car to do that. I actually still drive the same car, and that has never happened since. If anyone has any guesses as to what caused that, please put them down in the comments. I have wondered about this a lot over the years. At the end of that same year, my husband and I were newly married and living together in a small studio apartment. The ceiling above our bed was angled, and I would often stare at the beams when I couldn't sleep at night. Sometimes I would see what looked like green smoke swirling in the corners above us. I had read in a Christian book earlier that year that green smoke was the physical manifestation of a demon. I also thought I saw the same green smoke in the bathtub sometimes when I would get up to go to the bathroom. My heart would pound just like it did when I was a small child, and I would feel the same evil, chilling presence. It terrified me so much that a few times I woke up my husband to ask him to pray. Since I was married now and he was the spiritual head of our relationship, I figured maybe it would be more effective if he was the one to do it. Here's an example of one of those times. December 5th, 2012. I couldn't sleep at all last night. I tossed and turned, never getting comfortable or sleepy. I even woke my husband up and had him pray over our house because I sensed something evil in the corner by the beam over our bed. He was so tired, but he woke up and prayed a long, beautiful prayer for me. Looking back, I am very grateful for my husband's compassion. Imagine getting woken up in the middle of the night to cast out demons. Yikes. A few months later, I was having nightmares almost every night. It wasn't new because this has gone on for most of my life. I now recognize my frequent nightmares as a symptom of my PTSD, but at the time, having no understanding of mental health, I figured demons were behind it. I wasn't sure what to call them or how to cast them out, so I asked my dad about it. He suggested, based on something he had recently read, that I should pray, "I cover myself in the blood of Jesus," every night before going to bed. So I did, and sometimes it seemed to work and sometimes it didn't. But in retrospect, that visual, covering myself in blood, sounds like it's straight out of a horror film. And honestly, so is pretty much everything I've shared in this video. Spirits going through walls, green smoke, demons manipulating your mind, and having to perform spells like a fucking wizard. I guess when I really think about it, we had our own way of celebrating Halloween after all. Every single day, only with all the scariness and none of the fun. I'm still not a huge Halloween person. I don't have any of the childhood nostalgia attached to this holiday that many adults have, and scary things of a spiritual nature still really freak me out. And thankfully, I know I'm not alone in this. Omo Evo the Agnostic has a great video about being afraid of the dark and ghosts, despite not believing in them. I really relate to this, and I find it really helpful to know that other adults struggle with it too, because of the ways that we were indoctrinated as kids. It's also helpful to laugh at it a little bit. Finding the humor in it gives it less power. If any fellow Ex-Fundies would like to share their experiences with Halloween and/or demons growing up, please put them down in the comments. I would love to hear your stories. And to anyone who celebrates, I hope you have a safe and very happy Halloween. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.